happy Sunday to you all. You're in Clown Wizard Studios. My name is Kyle Field. Today, I'm making my first ASMR video, and I will be doing a colored pencil drawing of the house banner for House Stark from the Game of Thrones books. This design is part of a series that I did, started about 5 years ago, and took me about a year and a half to complete, and it encompassed every single banner for every house and every individual that I could find in the Game of Thrones books. I've been to ASMR for a couple of years now, and I got really into it, especially started watching it at work, and I've had my own ideas about what I can do to contribute in an ASMR video, and I got really excited about it. Just got a tax refund, so now I'm getting started. So without further ado, let's get some drawing. So this is my pencil drawing. It's what I will be copying onto mixed media paper. Since I started this project, I've been using Canson mixed media paper. It's very durable, very good for colored pencil drawings. So we'll be doing that, and today I will be using the little more textured side. The first thing we want to do to get started on this is I have a stencil, and every banner I've done is about 4.5 by 6 inches long. It's just the shape and design is something I just kind of came up with, and has a nice aesthetic to it. It actually fits very well for decorating. And so what I like to do, instead of tracing the stencil onto the front of the page, find the back of it, what we're going to do is put on the back. So grab a pencil. Doesn't need to be any, just needs to be a pencil of any kind. Oh, what the heck? Use a Prismacolor black pencil. Doesn't really, all we're doing is getting the outline of it onto the back of the page. And that way, when we finish it, and I mount the cutout drawing onto poster board, this border will not appear on the final piece because the drawing's on the back. Little trick I learned after doing several dozen of these, I would use Sharpie and draw like a thick outline, cut along the outline, but there'd be little bits of ink that I could see. And so it looks a lot cleaner, a lot neater. So now I'm going to line the direwolf up. Tape that down. Looks about even. If you're a fan of the show, you'll notice that it is not it's the full body of the direwolf and not just the head. A little fun fact, the description in the books is a gray direwolf running across an ice white field. In the TV show, it is a gray direwolf head. And in the books, that banner is actually Robb Stark's personal banner. And I think they just wanted something a little different for the show. There's actually quite a few banners that they changed up for the show from the books. And so now first thing we're gonna do is, I don't do any pencil work on the final piece. I just use my light pad and I trace and just do ink work straight to it. And so that's what we're gonna do now. And I'll do the outline first. I'm gonna use a 05 line width. It's Prismacolor pigment pen. I just started using these, and I am very happy I discovered Prismacolor makes these pens. So without further ado, just get started. Every time I would trace for a long time, I'd think of that scene from Chasing Amy in the comic book convention where Jason Lee is arguing with, it's actually the producer Scott Mosier, over his role in the comic book. And he said he's an inker. And Scott Mosier said, "Oh, you're a tracer." And then they end up going to fisticuffs after they argue for a bit. And every time I started tracing, I would just constantly think of that scene. And the funny thing about that scene is that while tracing, yes, there's an element of just copying something that you've already done or that's already been done. The reality is that tracing requires a lot of confidence. Because when I started getting back into drawing, which I had a kind of like a 15-year gap between, I'd say like 15 to 31, where I didn't really draw much at all. And when I started drawing again, I noticed that my confidence, especially when I was trying to trace over something, was very shaky. And so I go very slow, and the lines would look very just kind of just shaky and not smooth. Didn't have that neatness to it. But over time, as I realized, like, you know what, it's not the end of the world if it looks a little crooked or if I don't copy it just right. The important thing is to just have fun with it. When I started doing that, I started noticing, like, hey, it's starting to look a little bit better. Do my best to not block anything I'm drawing. So this little bit of a new experiment, new for me, since I'm not used to drawing with something recording me. So I'll just be mindful of that. I don't block my work. This direwolf design that I am drawing right now is actually the 4th incantation of the Stark direwolf that I attempted. It's actually one of the first banners I ever drew. It's about 5 years ago, and it was December 2014. I was actually using Crayola skinny markers to do drawings, and I did this one second, and I did it because it was white, so I didn't need to draw a background. I was like, oh, this will be quick and easy. And the outcome of that drawing ended up being what I describe as a gray corgi running across a nice white field. And it didn't take me long to redo that one. Next one looked more like a wolf. I actually decided to look up online what a wolf looks like, just so I could kind of get some of the proportions right and some of the figure right. And I did that one. It looked better, but it still had it looked like the wolf was more trotting than anything else, not really running. And still wasn't happy with it. But I was kind of burnt out on that one. I'm like, alright, I've done 2 of them. I'll kind of hold off on this. And after a while, I really wanted a banner that really represented the Stark house well, since they are pretty much the main characters of the series. So I did another one. It was attempt number 3. And it started to look more like the style that emerged kind my personal style that emerged. Still didn't quite look right. It looked like it was leaping more than running, because the back was, as you can see here, the back is, I tried to have it kind of bowed in a little bit, because I was thinking about when my parents used to have a greyhound, and I was thinking of it, like, when I'd see it run, its kind of back would just kind of like fold in a little bit, and it was like that. And before the third one, the back was more arched, and it didn't look like it was leaping and not running, and I'm like, this one isn't right either. It's close, but it's not quite there. So I tried another one. I think there was a four. This might be the fifth one. This is either the fourth or fifth design that I did, and I finally did this one, and it looks like he's, for me, he looks like he's running. It looks like something that Stark would be proud to have on their tunic or raise over their armies. And alright, that is going to be the last I do with the 05 pen. Then I'm going to switch over to a thinner one. I switch to an 03. And one of the things I learned about in a comic book, touch that up, in a book about making comics, I think it was an inking. It talked about line weights and how using different line weights in the same drawing can really add a lot of texture and depth to what you're doing, which is something I've kind of recently tried to incorporate and be mindful of. And so right now I'm doing the tail in a thinner line weight, because at least my experience with dogs is the fur on their tail is a little bit different than the fur on the rest of the body. It's a little bushier. It's a little more wiry, I guess. So you can see right there, even now, just you can kind of tell it's the fur along the direwolf's back is going to be would be different if you were to touch it, and that's kind of what the goal of using different line weights is. Do the nose and it's a 3 for the nose as well. Same with the ear and eye. And one thing I have definitely kept doing with my drawings is the eye. I leave white. It's something I just kind of, it's something I started with early on and just kind of kept to it. I think the inspiration was white marble statues didn't have any pupils in them because it was difficult, and kind of gave it a regal look, I thought, and so I decided to stick with it. Also makes it look a little more menacing. Alright, new pen time. I'm going with, alright, and switching down to 01. Alright, let's get that gum line. A nice snarl. The other thing too was I was having a hard time really getting a nice mean look for the direwolf, a nice intimidating look. And I realized that I was like, well, what does a dog look like when it's mad? It snarls. And how does that look? Well, the upper part of the snout is curled up, and the gum line is exposed. And that was another thing I had difficulty with, was just getting that look nailed down. The other thing I learned is whenever you're, at least from, I think this applies for everyone, but whenever you're doing points, especially for teeth, what you want to do is draw into the point, otherwise it will look a little bit more rounded. So just add these final details. These don't need to be precise. they will add a little bit of coloring time to the final drawing, just because I don't color over the ink lines, I color around them. But this is, in terms of difficulty, on a scale of 1 to 10 in terms of how long this is going to take, I would say this is probably about like a 3 or 4 in terms of time consuming. And the general rule for coloring these is you can almost have a chart of like how much, if you measured all the ink lines on the drawing, that would tell you exactly how much time that could tell you just how much time it's gonna take to finish one of these. Some of the banners that George Martin came up with were super complicated and super detailed. Some of them almost seemed like sometimes kind of felt like he was trolling with some of the designs. And my response to that was challenge accepted. I think the probably most irritating banner that I ever read of his was House Peasberry, the Reach. And it's literally 3 rows, so it's a border along the entire outside of the banner, and it's 3 rows of peas, and the inside is a pea pod. And so I had a circle stencil, and I had to go in and individually draw all these little circles in 3. I had to get, first of all, I had to do like a test page to make sure that they're gonna fit and that was gonna look right. And one of the first ones I ever did of Peasberry, I got to I think it was the second to last P. I got everything right, and as I was drawing it, the stencil slipped, and I goofed up. Rather than trying to put any whiteout or correction fluid on it, I just groaned, ripped it in half, started over. All right, that is the completed inking of Stark Banner. I think that takes about only took about like 10-15 minutes. So now what we're gonna do is color it in, and looks like I have a little bit of a smudge right there. Let's see if I can. I'm not sure if that's looks like that might be dirt. Looks like it might be a smudge of some kind. Let's see if I can erase that. If I can't get rid of it, that's no big deal. There we go. Yeah. There's probably just a little pencil smudge that got picked up on the page. No problem. All right.